Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking your time out of the day. Today we are welcoming the current National AAUP President, Todd Wolfson. Todd became the national president of the AAUP just last year and has led the organization through a very tumultuous year, to say the least. He is an associate professor in the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Rutgers University. His research focuses on the intersection of new media and contemporary social movements. Todd has been actively involved in the leadership of Rutgers' local chapter of the AAUP AFT, and he was a driving force in the creation of, as well as the first interim president of, HELU, Higher Ed Labor United, an organization whose aim is to unite higher ed workers wall to wall and coast to coast. In his first year as AAUP president, the AAUP, together with the AFT, has pushed back against a myriad of executive orders, guidelines, and mandates, with several lawsuits, such as the one aimed at stopping the massive and unlawful federal research funding cuts of $400 million at Columbia University, and another seeking to block the Trump administration from carrying out large-scale arrests, detentions, and deportations of non-citizen students and faculty members who participate in protected First Amendment activities. Todd is here today to speak on higher education moving forward. Please join me in welcoming Todd Wolfson, AAUP President.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And thanks all you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Amy, for setting this up. I really think, given everything we're facing, it's best to have more of a conversation. But maybe I'll just outline some of how we've approached AUP since we were elected over the summer, and then a little bit about how we're approaching the crisis moment that we're in, which I don't need to tell anybody here about because I think we all are fully aware of what's facing us. So I'll start with why and we ran and then what we're trying to achieve in general, and then jump into like the moment we're in. So, as Michael was saying, I was president. I still am for another 2 months, and I'm really looking forward to that tenure being over. But I've been president of Rutgers AUP AFT, and in that time, while I was president, I think we sort of identified what we thought was a lack of national level leadership around higher education, in a general sense, and less so a lack of a response to the particular crisis we're in right now, and more a lack of a coordinated response to the long road of defunding and divestment that's taken place in our sector, and all of the impacts that divestment has had on our sector. And in that, like, I'm talking about like the 50 or 60 years of federal and state funding that's kind of been drained out of higher education, which has moved our public institutions in particular towards massive skyrocketing tuition, massive student debt, a contingency crisis with growing numbers of teaching faculty with contingent and short-term contracts, and a growing army of, I would call them higher ed bureaucrats who don't come out of the faculty who in many ways run our institutions. And so we saw that problem, and we saw lack of a national response to that. And the other thing I think we saw was that, certainly I saw, I can say, is that higher ed as a sector is unionized by like 10 different parent unions, AFT and AAUP, but also UAW and SEIU and AFSCME, all these alphabet soup of unions. And the problem was that was one of the reasons there was a lack of leadership. Nobody took higher ed as a critical place to fight over. And the only union that only represents higher ed workers is AAUP. And so we really thought AAUP had a critical role to play in figuring out how to fight back against divestment. Fast forward, Donald Trump wins election, and it turns out we're not necessarily only facing federal and state divestment over the last 50 to 60 years, but we're facing a rising authoritarianism with a particular vendetta against higher ed workers and higher education as an institution. And so I guess it changed the dynamics. Um, and so I'll just say, so that's why we decided to run. We felt like there needed to be a consistent organizing focus that builds alignment across all different unions that represent higher ed workers, and not just faculty, but all higher ed workers as well as our students. We need to start to build an aligned vision about what to do in the sector. Um, and we needed to pressure our international unions to take our sector more seriously. And we needed to organize and build our power, both at the campus level and nationally. Um, so that's why we decided to run. Um, I'll say that when we were elected this summer, we found a national organization. This is our shared national organization, AAUP, um, was in a bit of a mess internally. I want to be honest and transparent. There was like a pretty bad staff management like strife and a pretty bad like set of relationships there. And then there was also a finance department and financial situation which wasn't really healthy. And then there was also a relationship between AAUP and AFT which was not healthy. Um, and so at one level, what we are working on, and I'll just lay out some of the things that we were working on prior to the Trump election, then jump into a little bit about the Trump election. But really, I want to have a back and forth. But what we figured we needed to work on was, I'll say three core things. One was fixing the relationship between staff and management and staff and leadership. And so that's an ongoing process. We have a new executive director, Mia McIver. She is fantastic. If you don't know her, we should invite her to come to a meeting. Mia comes out of UCAFT, which is the University of California, um, uh, adjunct and full-time non-tenure unit. It's an AFT local, about 7,000 members. She was president of it, and she'd become our executive director. Um, and and that's really going a long way in sort of rebuilding the relationship and trust between staff. The other thing we had to do is just rehire a new finance department to sort of get the finances straight. And I don't we don't need to go into details, but I think it's important for you all to know, like the finances weren't in a great place, right, for the organization, and the finance department wasn't in a great place. And so that's taken a lot of work to fix that. And third, we're working really hard to build a healthy relationship with AFT. If people want to talk about that, we should also get into it. My position is that we're in a relationship with them at least for another year and a couple months, and we should try to make that work. And if we determine it's not working, we can determine that at our next biennial meeting in summer of 26. But for now, we want to make that relationship work for us. And so that's been our goal. Happy to get into that in detail. So that's one bucket of work that we really focused on, which is fixing the organization. The second bucket of work was organizing. The backbone of any like national organization that represents workers is building out our power. And so we've launched Organize Every Campus. I've heard that Oakland has been a part of that. And I think we've trained about 500 to 700 people over the last um, fall and spring, and the goal is to recruit 10,000 new members into AAUP, and we're on our way. We've recruited since we've come into leadership. AAUP's grown by 7,000 members. Our goal was 10,000 in the calendar year, so I think we'll get there. Um, and that will bring us to about a jump from about 40,000 members to 50,000 members, so a 20% growth. And that's because of organizing. And so that's the second thing we really wanted to focus on was building our organization, training people in basic organizing skills, and building the density and power of both our collective bargaining units and our advocacy chapters. And then the third area of focus was building more democratic sort of like space in the organization. What we found was there wasn't a practice of all member meetings. There wasn't a consistent practice of chapter leader meetings. So we've been instituting those. We probably had like 6 all member meetings so far, 6 chapter president meetings. We want to do them a lot, and we want to figure out other democratic spaces where we can talk and share direction, hear from members, hear from chapter leaders, and orient so that the organization serves its members and its chapters. That's the only thing, that's our goal here. So, and those are the three main things we really wanted to focus on and there is a fourth, I'll say, which was also build a national political agenda for the sector. And so before Trump was elected in September, we established this table called Labor for Higher Ed, which has about 9 international unions in it. And AAUP is really leading it along with HELU. And we put out a vision for the sector. And we called on both the Republicans and Democrats who are running for president and vice president to look at our agenda and conform to it. We had a lot of dialogue with the Harris campaign. We didn't have any. We did reach out to the Trump campaign at the time. We didn't have any dialogue with them. And that vision was a fully funded public higher education, an end to student debt, a move to cull back on contingency, and more funding for NIH, NSF, and MSIs and HBCUs. That was the core of the agenda we put out. And all 10 unions jumped on board. So anyway, I'll just fast forward to now. So that was the core agenda we came into office with, and that's what we've been moving. And then Trump was elected, and that's put us obviously on our back foot, right? And so our vision is to fight on 3 levels in relationship to the Trump administration. At one level, and you've seen this, it's in the courts, right? And so we could go into it and talk about all the attacks on higher ed. I think everyone knows them, right? We can go through the funding cuts to our biomedical research infrastructure, the attacks on the autonomy of our institutions like Columbia, the abductions of our students, and the visa revocations that have happened more recently, and the attempts to chill freedom of speech and protest. It's happening, and it's only going to get worse. And so from our vantage, at one level, we need to fight them in the courts. So we've launched about 4 lawsuits now. I'm happy to detail them. One around the DEIA executive order, one around Columbia, one around the chilling of speech because of the threat of deportation, and one around the elimination of the Department of Education. There's a couple more in the hopper, but those are the lawsuits we've launched. Some of them were in the process of trying to get injunctions. The second layer of the fight is building out our power to influence our elected leaders. The NIH cuts in particular should be a red state, blue state, purple state issue. It should be an issue in Michigan because millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars is being lost, jobs are being lost, and our health is being undermined. And so we're really trying to figure out how to affect elected leaders that would align with the Trump administration. But because we're talking to them about the very real material consequences of these cuts, we think we may be able to move. So the second layer is pushing our elected leaders. And then the third layer is getting in the streets, organizing and building power. We had yesterday across the country, we had 55 actions. We think about 20 to 30,000 people out on the streets, particularly around the NIH cuts. We have another set of actions on April 17th, which are broader. That's focused on freedom of speech, academic freedom, institutional autonomy, Palestine. But our position is that just protests aren't going to do enough. We're going to need to build more power from there. So anyway, I don't want to go on. I hear myself droning, and I'd really prefer a conversation. But I just want to outline we had a general agenda coming in, and then we have been taking on a specific approach with the Trump attacks. And all of this is around both a long-term vision of the sector and also a specific need to respond to the crisis. I'll say one last thing. I expect that this is going to be a really hard 4 years for all of us. Really hard, and it's going to hurt, and our institutions are going to be hurt, and people are going to be hurt, and careers are going to be hurt, and it's heartbreaking, and we don't deserve it. But I also want to say this: I really believe we will come out stronger as a sector, and right now, higher education is one of the leading sectors leading the fight against the attacks on democracy that we're seeing. I'll shut up. I hope we can get into a back and forth.
Okay, then I'm just going to throw it open. And does anyone want to ask Todd a question, make a statement, start a discussion?
And feel free if you don't want to say something out loud. If you want to DM me a question, I can ask it as well. I can actually start because I have a question. One of the things we have done is we've presented the university with an LOA to try to address the sort of destructive nature of what's happening in terms of people. We have merit, our raises are based on merit, and then in terms of the tenure review process, we had a very similar structure built in with COVID that people sort of got held harmless for the effects of COVID on their research. And so we've presented them with that. But one of the things they asked us was, do we know of other universities that have agreed to or are taking similar measures to protect their faculty? And I wondered if you had heard of anything.
I know that Rutgers were doing the same thing. So I don't know. I'm supposed to meet with the general counsel at Rutgers today, actually. We haven't gotten an agreement yet, but we did make a similar ask because we have a lot of STEM faculty that are losing their grants that are pre-tenure, and this cannot they cannot be held responsible to this. And we won the same. Uh, we didn't do it around merit raises though. To be fair, we did it on tenure timeline. We have in a 4-year contract, we have 3 across the board raises and 1 merit raise year. And that merit raise year is gone in our contracts. We don't have it right now. And so we are doing it, but it's around getting our tenure timeline extended for our pre-tenure. So it's a similar discussion, but not exactly mirroring now that I think about it. We can put out a message though and find out if anybody else is doing this for
That would
sure.
be that would be really helpful because that was one of the first questions, one of the only questions our provost asked when we presented our draft.
It seems like the least an administration can do right now, in my mind.
Thanks.
Well, I'll jump in.
Andy.
I am a kind of a science geek, and so expect. And first, I want to thank you for what you've been doing. The extroverts among us, I think, are perhaps going to be the most effective at herding the rest of us into useful actions. So I'm a science geek, and eventually, I think I'll get impacted by this. But I'm certainly more concerned. I'm concerned more broadly. This sort of long-term move to the right, the erosion of the concept of public good. And then, as you point out, we have this immediate crisis because lots of people voted for Donald Trump. And I have people, and I've slowly begun getting more active. But for example, your backdrop there, I'd never heard of that organization. And so I'd heard of something called Indivisible. And so I'm starting to get familiar with ways I can act, and I'm planning to have a sit down with congressmen or their staff in the next recess, do things like that. Don't always get out to protests. But I don't know if I have a question so much as, it seems like coalition building and getting the public on board is going to be a really important aspect of this. I had some folks ask me yesterday, hey, are you affected by this NIH stuff? What can we do? And to be honest, things seem so fragmented now. I'm not sure, there are options for actions, but I'm not sure what direction to point people in. And sometimes I'm developing an idea of where I should be going, but I'm not sure really what to tell other folks.
Yeah, Andrew, it's a great question. So the kill the cuts is something that we established. I put the website in the chat, and then I did the bit.ly wrong. There's a letter we're sending. Yesterday, we did an action in Newark, New Jersey yesterday. We had like about 400 or 500 people out there with the mayor of New Jersey who's running for governor, and Randy Weingarten joined us. And every action, there was about 55 of them yesterday. We asked everyone to fill out a letter. So I, by mistake, put www in front of bit.ly April 8 letter. If you just take the www out, that was a mistake on my part, but forgive me, and just do bit.ly April 8 letter. It's a letter that goes straight to your legislators calling on them to condemn the cuts and fully restore NIH funding. That's not the answer, Andrew, but just so you know, it's a step. So we established Kill the Cuts as a campaign, particularly focused on the attacks on the bio. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it. Particularly focused on the biomedical research infrastructure part of our fight. But you're right, it's a crowded space, right? Like Indivisible did we announced the April 8 action, and then Indivisible announced the April 5th action like a week later, and we weren't talking to them. And they're bigger, and so their event got much more space, and so we're trying to figure out how to proceed. But the other thing I'll say is our assessment is we can't fight the NIH attack alone. We have to connect it to larger fights if we're going to be able to win it. And so we're going to step back and think through how we need to connect the fights around the NIH to the fights around Medicaid and Social Security and the Department of Education, and sort of align those fights and build them out together. I share your concern. Last year at this time, the NIH had given out $6 billion in funding. Now, this year at the same time, they've given 2.7 billion out. If you follow that line, we're talking about a $20 billion, because they give about $40 billion out a year in research grants. We're talking about a $20 billion cut in the biomedical research infrastructure of the United States, at least, because the knock-on effects beyond that, it's probably bigger, much bigger than that. So it's going to be extremely harmful to all of us if we don't figure out a way to restore the infrastructure. I'll say one good thing is yesterday we won the other major thing they were doing at the NIH was they were trying to cap research fringe rates at 15%. We were part of a process in a lawsuit that won an injunction on that, which now looks like it's won in court indefinitely. And that fight is won. So again, they're purposely attacking us at 100 different points at once. And so we can only respond, in our best. But so there will be a concerted effort to build out organization around fighting back around science. And we welcome your leadership, Andrew. So I'm happy to talk more with you about it.
Right. I mean, just off the top of my head, being able to walk into my congressman's office with a graphic that says, look, I'm all for balancing the budget, but without compromising mission. And so what's being done is really compromising the mission in a catastrophic way. And it's really relative to what would be needed to address the deficit is insignificant. So why are we doing that?
I have a graph for you. I'll put it in the chat.
So if I may say something, first of all, Todd, thank you for all the advocacy that you're doing for all higher education. I'm Tony Glover. I'm from the School of Nursing at Oakland University. And in addition to all the things that you had on your list that you're advocating for, I hope you would also consider adding, not only Department of Education, but the most recent executive order suggests consolidating the National Institute for Nursing Research within another organization, which will really hurt nursing research nationwide and hurt nursing researchers in terms of getting funded. So I would hope that some of the work would be to, keep independent agencies, as well as preserve their funding.
I actually had not heard about this, Tony. Yes, we will. We will at least look into this and see if there's an angle. And again, to me, there's three ways we want to approach these things. One is we need to organize around them. We need to let people know about them. We need to build our power around them. Two, we need to see if we can challenge them in court and if there's aspects of doing that. And then three is talking to our elected leaders. And I'll say this about my position on AAUP: we cannot afford not to be focused on elections anymore. I don't think AUP is ever endorsed at a national level. I'm sure that the collective bargaining chapters have, but the national never has. I don't think we can go into the 2026 elections without taking a stance on critical issues that affect our sector. I don't want to overly politicize our elections, but if leaders, whether they're in Michigan running for state office or national office out of Michigan, or whether they're running for Senate seats, if they're going to have an agenda that actively undermines our sector, I think it's absolutely in the rights and in the interest of our organization to engage and try to get people who are going to support science, higher education, our students, and academic freedom um, as central to what they're trying to do. And so that's the second. Those are the three areas where we can fight. But Tony, if I'll put my email in the chat, and if you want to maybe offer me some more info on this, I'll bring it to our team, and we'd be happy to look into it. I can't guarantee. We'll talk to our legal team, and we'll look at a couple other things. We'll talk to AFT, which has a lot of healthcare workers and nurses as well, and see if there's an approach we want to take to it. I'll throw my email in the chat. And Andrew, I was going to put the graph in the chat, but it won't let me. So I'll have to figure out another way to get you the graph.
If you send it to me, I can get it to.
All right, thank you. I'll send it to you, Amy.
Yeah,
Thank
Todd,
you.
I think what one of my questions, without trying to, get down the rabbit hole too much in terms of the daily chaos, we all have to protect our mental health in some ways, and mine has been, short bursts of the news and then back to my other work. And but the thing I struggle with is okay, there was this, directive to consolidate NR into a larger entity, but then it immediately goes to a lawsuit. And so I think that stymies advocacy in a way, because it's should I just wait for the lawsuit to go through, or what should I be doing while it's in this mess without getting too overwhelmed with the whole process of it?
Yeah, I would say we can't depend on the courts. We have to use the courts. We must. We have no choice but to file lawsuits, and sometimes file them quickly because we're trying to get in the way of something or at least slow it down. But we cannot assume that we're going to win that way. And so this issue I had not heard about, but with the NIH, for instance, we've reached out to, we sent in thousands of letters to our elected officials around the NIH. And now we've organized 2 days of action. And we have to do a better job getting more people information. That Andrew hadn't heard about it clearly, but we have organized at least on 50 campuses yesterday. And so we got to get in the streets if these things are going to have a real effect on the health of our Americans, everyday Americans. If it's going to have a impact on the livelihoods of nurses, if it's going to have an impact on our healthcare system, it's incumbent on us to fight. We have no choice because no one else is going to do it for us. And so I don't know. I don't have an answer to the specific attack, but we can't sit back and let these things happen, because I think the more we don't stand up right now, the more emboldened the Trump administration will be. And so it's really incumbent on us in each moment. I mean, I'm with you. It's crazy because there's so much going on. And if we attempt to respond to everything, we won't be able to develop our own strategy because we'll only be reactive. So that makes me nervous. But nonetheless, we have to respond to these things, because if we don't, they're gonna take that as a green light, and they're gonna take what's testing the water and take it a lot farther, is my estimation. And so we have to figure out how to fight on each one of these fronts.
I mean, I can ask another question, because one of the things when we meet with the administration and we're trying to handle the just onslaught of stuff that's happening right now, one of the things that we are repeatedly hearing from the administration, which has to some extent validity, is this idea that they don't want to talk about anything out loud, that they're trying to handle things behind closed doors because funding. And on the one hand, we completely understand what they're talking about. On the other hand, where is that line? It allows them to possibly be doing things that are really problematic that we aren't seeing. So, for example, one of the things that they did sort of, I would say, without very publicly announcing it, is that we had affinity graduations. And that was one of the first ones they sort of had to tackle is, are we going to have to cancel these affinity? There was a lavender one, there's various different ones. And what they ultimately did is they are inviting everyone on campus to every single affinity graduation so that it doesn't run afoul of any of the new sort of DEI mandates. And that's fine and that's good. They're not going to sort of publicly really advertise them in a way. We did get emails announcing that they're happening today, but that's it. So it makes sense. But like, I feel like I need language or we need language or something to push back on the total silence that they seem to be presenting us with.
You know, it's a really, Amy, it's a really hard question. I'll start here, which is that from my vantage, our administrations have not been able to respond to meet this moment the way it needs to be met. And they're all doing the ostrich dance, and you know, trying to hide your head may work to make sure Oakland or Rutgers are the next university that the Trump administration targets. It's true. And so at one level, I get it and I'm sympathetic to it too. At another level, if no one stands up, if none of the universities stand up, we're not going to have the same kind of higher education in a couple of years that we once enjoyed. One that centers democracy, academic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, critical inquiry, is a bedrock of the innovation for this country, both in our biomedical research, but also in all sorts of other ways, a reason why we have social mobility and social progress. We're going to lose that. We will lose that, and we will lose that because our administrations are not standing up and they're trying to hide. And Colombia is an unfortunate example of this. They could have sued the administration and fought over that $400 million in cuts. They could have. In fact, we had at least a phone call with the General Counsel of Colombia to talk about it. And they decided not to. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure and a lot of reasons not to do it, right? But ultimately, what they did was they gave the Trump administration control, in effect, over a lot, or at least the ability to force them to change how they approached teaching and researching the Middle East, admitting grad and undergraduate students, policing those same students, right? That's an independent organization. And the Trump administration brought not one shred of evidence, nor did they follow Title VI, which has a very clear process. If you think there's anti-Semitism on campus, that you should follow in order to prove it, and then potentially cut funding. And the funding that you cut has to be directly tied to that violation of anti-Semitism, directly connected. They were going after research 40 blocks north on pediatrics. That had nothing to do with any claims of anti-Semitism. We can't. The Columbia failure is one that if that rolls through the entirety of our higher education, we're going to have a very different system coming out of this. And we're going to have to claw back the things that we enjoy. So I'm with you. And I don't know. I don't know how you tell the Oakland administration that it's time to stand up. The other thing I would say is that there is power in collectivity. There is no reason that Oakland has to stand up alone, right? That's the thing that's like most frustrating to me. 500 university presidents could have written a letter together denouncing the Trump administration's move on Columbia. Now on Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, Northwestern, Cornell, Brown, right? It's going to expand from there. Every single school on that OCR list, two of my campuses in Rutgers are all going to get hit with the same stuff. There's no reason why 500 or 1,000 college and university presidents could have written a letter denouncing what they've done, and there would have been insulation there, but they haven't. And so they are not leading with ethics, morals, values, and a vision of what our sector, what the importance of their sector. And and it's that's why AUP and other unions feel like we have to step into this breach really vigorously because we have to defend the core values that we all stand together on. So I don't know what to say about this in terms of how to deal with Oakland. But I do appreciate your question, Amy, about how do we get a language. And right now, the language needs to be that our institutions can't shy away from defending the core principles that we all share. And if they are shying away from that, we have to hold them accountable.
I mean, I think that's useful. I think that is useful language to use with our president. I mean, our president just sent out an email last week that talked about how Oakland is, I don't know, what was the language? Something about making moral decisions, sticking with our moral compass or something. And I think that's the sort of thing we have to hold them to. So,
I think the thing that's hard though, like in our very backyard, like the University of Michigan just closed. University of Michigan, closed their Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I mean, that was mind-blowing to me, and that was so I don't I was just really surprised and shocked that a pillar university such as the University of Michigan, who's known for diversity, equity, inclusion, like it just killed my spirit. And that's the type of work I do here on this campus. And I'm not saying that they don't, you know, secretly champion that, but I mean they caved. And I get it. I mean I get it, but I think it goes back to what you said, Todd. Like, I mean, I think you have to have higher power, like big leaders at big institutions forming and joining together to stand up. I don't know. I feel like as a single faculty member, like that, I don't know. That move was really just very disheartening.
I agree. And so again, and this is not you, Julie, or me, but we collectively have to hold our institutions accountable, right? And we have to figure out a way to either force them to stand up, or we have to find other mechanisms to stand up for ourselves, and to stand up for the academic project. I don't think we have a choice. And, it's scary because um, clearly the Trump administration is taking no prisoners. And so, you know, I mean, it's not a time where anyone should feel safe. But there's some of us who are less vulnerable. And frankly, if we don't stand up now, then they're going to wash over our vulnerable communities. And they are already. We're seeing, Rutgers had 12 visa revocations this past weekend, 12. The people who got their visas revoked have done not, I mean, it's not even look, the revocation, the abductions of like Mahmoud Khalil um, and the other and Mamadou Talal, etc., are shocking and awful. They have a right to their freedom of speech to talk about Palestine. It's shocking and awful. But the revocations that the hundreds that have happened across the country over the last weekend are have nothing even to do with that. They're just revoking visas based on I think it's primarily the countries, and if it's the Muslim ban 2.0 countries, they're revoking those visas right at this point, and so plus China. So we had at Rutgers 12. It sounds like OU had one too, and it's gonna hit our more vulnerable communities the hardest. And so we have no choice but to stand up in this moment. I don't think silence is a appropriate way to approach this. So, but I agree that University of Michigan's decision was very disappointing.
I know Todd has to scoot out in about 5 minutes. Do other people have questions or concerns they want to raise? Go ahead. Wait, where'd you go? Oh, there
Right
you
there.
are.
Hello, I'm Angel Bravo from Computer Science Department. Like Lacha described last time, how our department got hit by the suspension of our interaction with Chinese institutions. We lost a lot of students and money, and from what I get and grasp from what's going on in the department, there's already investment of China in the facilities that we were supposed to use with some of the for the course work that we are supposed to have with the with China. Um, so, and adding to that, it's pretty disheartening. People express that regarding the situation in the University of Michigan, and especially myself. I live in Ann Arbor, so I'm really close to what's happening here. But I've been reading some op-eds around, like Dave Siren wrote how he can actually understand why the leadership of every single school is not supporting this. Literally, most of these are leadership in every single school. These are money people, right? Like, I'm not saying like they are going around like grasping money, but these people are looking for saving their interests. Many of them are tied to the same administration interests. So they are not like accumulate money and figure out things about how to preserve their positions and that sort of thing. So I would think there is obviously the path that obviously the AUP will look to appeal to the administrations and feel like there's as it was described a minute ago, like the ostrich dance, but this ostrich dance will not go away. Like they will be doing that, and actually Todd described it just fine. Like we need to find ways to fight back even above the administration. And to be honest, after describing like the kidnapping and disappearance of students, we are going full freaking fascist in this country. And I know it's being recorded here, and it's very dangerous. So I think we need to not only start appealing to democracy. I know Todd went on, we need to go on the election kind of thing. I mean, why we don't go? We have so many people on board. Let's freaking build a independent political organization, right? Why we're thinking and just keep doing the same dance that didn't work with the Democrats during Biden administration, didn't work. It won't work with the fascists during the Trump administration. It won't work for the next administration that comes after that. We had a full genocide going on during Biden administration. It keeps going during Trump administration, and we keep appealing to these two genocidal parties. I know we should tie. Todd said we need to tie this, all the struggles together. So I'm trying to do that, like just bring it on to the plate that we need to go beyond just appealing to the immediate administrators and beyond. So I don't know if that makes sense. We can build a power, as Todd was saying, but this power cannot be just, a tiptoeing around Democrats because they are not our allies. So I'm just saying that, and I hope this set some alarms up and see if that makes sense. Thank you.
I can try to respond to you, Angel. Um, um, I mean, I see it through multiple lenses right now. I think right now, in this precise moment, we are facing, however people are comfortable characterizing the current administration, and there's a lot of ways to characterize it, post-fascist, fascist, authoritarian. It doesn't really matter, right, how we characterize it. We do need to know what we're up against. And I think we're up against an alliance between a white nationalist formation that's allied itself with a billionaire class. And they have built power that we've never actually faced before in this country. They've amassed power. They're also overplaying their hand quite a bit, but that's a different issue. And so like I have the same dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party as you do, Angel. But I don't think right now in this precise moment, I think we have to approach this with as a united front. We have to build the broadest base of power possible to respond to the threats in front of us. That doesn't mean a united front that's okay with genocide in Palestine. Don't get me wrong, but that still means a united front that builds and amasses as much power as possible to defend ourselves because we can't lose this fight. We can't. If we lose this fight, there are really dark days in front of us, I believe. And so I think we have to build and amass power. That's why we're building a coalition of higher ed labor unions, right? We think we need to align ourselves with every higher ed worker and build power through that. We need to align ourselves with students. We need to build a sector alliance with K-12 workers, with healthcare workers, and with the federal workers that are getting laid off. And we need to scale up our militancy. That's clear. The days of action are good because they help us understand where we're strong. They help people get into motion. They help us map. They are not a solution to the problem in front of us. We have to figure out a way to respond where we have leverage. And the leverage we have with the federal government, in my estimation, is going to be at the next continuing resolution in the fall. That's a moment when we have to have the capacity, we have to train ourselves, we have to build alignment with other sectors, and we have to respond not through the Democratic Party, but as workers in a sector in response to the dangers and damage that the administration is doing to us and doing to our country. How we proceed from there, higher ed is not strong enough to build an independent political organization of any meaning. And so I can't tell you I have a full understanding of the path forward with respect to electoral politics. I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. I have a lot of personal feelings, but what we should do and how we do that, I think is an open question. But what I do know is that higher ed labor and AAUP are not strong enough to figure that out alone, for sure. And if we try to forge a path that isolates ourselves, we will get we will get rolled. And so we have to be like, I am for a militant response to this and a future that lifts all of us up in the most meaningful way possible. But I want to do it. I think we need to do it strategically and in a way that makes sure that we win. And so I think the issues you're bringing up are ones, Angel, that I'm happy to talk about. And I think we should be having these conversations. But I also think we have to think strategically about how we get where we're going. And we might not, the steps might not always be as clear as they may seem. But anyway, I really appreciate your comments.
I do think you're not a trustworthy union leader unless you drop F-bombs. So I did want to say while you were still here, I just did want to remind the membership that for the second year in a row when the National AAP has done the Day of Action, we've managed to schedule an event the day before you guys put out the date. So instead of doing something on April 17th, we have our Labor Solidarity event on April 16th. So this is a day where we are going to talk about labor issues, but also we will usually the National puts out some sort of documentation we can use and present to our members at that meeting. So just a reminder to everyone that is in connection. We kind of merge them since we keep scheduling the date a day before you all schedule the national one. So
I'm sorry for that.
Oh, it's all good.
I need to not be so organized. I need to not schedule things.
Don't say not organized. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump, but I'll just leave you all with this, that one, we want to make this as democratic of an organization as possible. We want more dialogue like this. And so we'll continue having all member town halls, chapter leader meetings, and we want you to come. And also AAUP National must serve Oakland University AAUP. And so we need to know what we're doing that helps you and what we're not doing enough of, and reorient ourselves. I think, and this is not, I'm not critiquing the previous leadership per se. I'm critiquing AAUP writ large, which is I don't think it had an ethos of serving its members and its core institutions. And that's not a way forward. And so I really want to leave you with that no matter what I want to build an organization that reflects the needs of Oakland University AAUP and all of you as members. And so It should be an open door, and you should come hard at us if we're not doing what you need us to do. We need to know, right? Like this organization has 500 chapters, right? So we're not going to intuitively know what AAUP needs and wants from us. So I'm asking, tell us, right? Tell us, and we will try to figure it out. At least we'll be open to a dialogue with you to solve it and to work with you. So that's a full like commitment from at least the new leadership team that I bring to you all also.
Thank you, Todd. And thanks for meeting with us today. I know you have to get someplace else.
Thanks, you all.
Yeah, on behalf of the chapter, again, thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Have a beautiful day,
Bye-bye.
y'all. I'll see you all
Thank
soon.
you.